Hello, hello, hello.
Howdy.
This is Maybe We're Just Rambling, and we are your hosts. That's Stuart.
And that's Rebecca.
And this is a podcast where we sit and ramble, as the name implies, about anything and everything under the sun. We have a couple of different topics for you today, and something fun that we're going to be doing for the first time, and hopefully
Continue on
yes,
at the end.
yes. So stick around for the entire episode. You're more than welcome to skip through any parts that you don't personally enjoy, but
Don't do that.
we think that you guys will really enjoy what we're doing at the end, and hopefully we can make it a permanent addition to our podcasting program. But before we dive into everything, I always like to take a second before we really get into the discussion and just check in. So, how are you feeling? Because this is starting to feel like Groundhog Day.
I mean, it is. Well, she says Groundhog Day. It's because we had a flub last week and a recording problem.
Yeah.
But anyways, how I'm feeling. I'm feeling pretty good. Things are getting a little more routine.
Mm-hmm.
We've clearly been established here a little time, and we've actually been able to do a couple fun things. We've been able to settle.
Yeah.
And I finally feel like we are relatively settled.
Mm-hmm.
For as much as you can be in something on wheels.
Yes.
How are you?
I agree with what you said 100%. Last week was a little bit hectic.
Yeah.
It was our second week being back in school taking classes, so we'll get into that in a minute, but it felt kind of chaotic and a little bit disorganized at times, and then obviously we want to try to get an episode out every single week. And last week, that just didn't end up happening. We had so many technical difficulties and lost like an hour and a half of our lives. It was one of the most frustrating things in the world. I'm really working towards avoiding that happening going forward. We took
a break at like 30 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and then played back what we had, and it was nothing but static.
Yeah.
And then we were 10 or 20 minutes in of doing it again, and I looked over and I just started like messing with the mic cord, and it was like, that's not plugged in.
Our trains of thought were completely derailed at that point. It wasn't, we re-recorded the podcast episode, but it wasn't good quality.
It was all thrown together.
It was horrible.
But we're going to do this all in one take, and this is going to be
it's going to be a positive experience.
Meaningful, cohesive thought.
Yes. Obviously, we had kind of discussed like what we were going to do for this podcast episode specifically, like if we were going to wait and just call last week a complete wash and then push this out on Friday, or if we were going to turn around, post this today, and then record another episode for the end of the week. And I think that's what we decided on.
We want to kind of nail this down a little bit more and have something that we do pretty routinely. So I think we're going to push this out quickly, and then Thursday or Friday, we'll put out another one. So it won't be like we missed one, we just were late.
Yeah. I think I've been kind of taking stock of what our listeners want to hear. I've posted a few different polls and question boxes on the Maybe We're Just Rambling Instagram story page. So I mean like our stories on
the
our Instagram
page.
Yes. And a lot of people were more than kind enough to share their thoughts and their feedback about like podcast episode length and that sort of thing. A lot of you said that you like podcast episodes that are in the 30 to 40 minute mark. So we're going to try to keep that in mind. Can't guarantee that we're always going to stick to that.
And then there's those hard chargers that would sit down for 90 minutes.
Yes.
Or 90 minutes while they're doing something else.
Yes. And we appreciate you because that will probably happen from time to time. And then I got some really awesome feedback from my brother Aaron. He said that he really likes hearing the DIY stuff, the RV stuff. I mean, that's perfect because that's something that we know about. And then he also said, this is high praise. He said the two podcasts that he listens to is ours and Granger Smith's.
And if you know anything, I think I've said this before.
You mentioned it.
Yeah. But I used to listen to Granger Smith's podcast way back in the day. And he's not up on like some pedestal for me. But he
He
does
makes
some.
solid content.
He's a solid speaker and
If you
singer.
don't know, he's a country music singer from Texas,
Yeah,
and he's never blown up really big or anything like that. But people in Texas who follow like Texas country
you're
singers,
looking at like Aaron Watson and
mhm,
Granger Smith,
mhm,
and right now those are your guys that are
mhm,
like the Alan Jackson and George Strait.
mhm. So being compared, or not really being compared, but being told that like we're competing with Granger
I don't
Smith
even know
or
if you'd say we're
somebody.
competing, but
Well,
yeah,
but somebody's listening to, I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. I really appreciated hearing that.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Thanks,
anyway,
bud.
yeah, we really appreciate it. All of that is to say that feedback is always welcome. We're still very much figuring this out. Obviously, there's a lot for us to learn. And we want to, as much as we want to sit here and shoot the shit and have a good time, we also want to create content that people actually want to listen to. And so if there's a specific topic that you would like to hear us discuss, feel more than free to let us know, because that helps us out. But yeah, just circling back, I'm good. I think last week was a little bit crazy. Today's Monday, so it's felt like a Monday, but I always go into every single week hoping for the best and
Hmm.
having a positive outlook. I took last week to really like slow down and focus in on my school routine. I took the week off of filming. I didn't push out a video on Saturday like I usually do
On your YouTube
on my
channel.
YouTube channel, because I felt like there's been a lull in the action over here, so it felt like a really good time to take a break and just kind of relax and breathe a little bit. I had enough creative energy left over that I was able to post on my blog, which is something that I recently just started doing. I can put a link to that in the show notes if you guys care at all. But at any rate, that's aside the point. Um, yeah, I
You're
just
good.
the season feels very much like fall, and I posted about this on my Instagram today too. It feels like a really good time to slow down and kind of conserve your energy and breathe. And a lot of people, when they come out of the summer, they feel kind of burnt out. And then if you have a family, or if you are in school yourself, then you head right into fall, taking classes. That can be a huge source of burnout for a lot of people. And I think this is a really good time of year to be mindful of conserving your energy and doing things that nurture you and help you rest, because that is what nature is doing right now. If you live in, the northern hemisphere, fall and winter is upon us, and it's a good time to relax and conserve and just be a little bit.
Hmm.
So,
So you have hinted at it. I guess I have too.
mm-hmm.
But our number one topic was going to be school,
Yeah, I think
and
it's just
so
something that's really valuable for us to share, because
mhm,
we've so from the very beginning been all about sharing alternative ways of doing
yeah.
things, and I think this is a huge sticking point for us.
So with school in mind, we've already said that we just started school and we're in our third week,
Not for the
and
first time
it's
ever, just for
no,
the fall.
yeah, I got this.
I believe you.
So
I'm
we're in our
sorry.
third week of school. For not the first time,
I'm sorry.
and it's November, and say a brick and mortar school, they don't start school in November, so clearly we're not there anymore.
Doing something different.
We're doing something different. Yeah. We're going to school online at American Military University.
Mm-hmm.
It's the university that we both went to school whenever we were active duty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's given us the freedom to go on that really long trip over the summer and to go to your brother and sister-in-law's wedding
Mm-hmm.
and have so many new experiences. And all things aside, I think we've done it for the right reason. Um, and we've added to our quality of life.
Yeah, I think kind of just to start back at the beginning to paint a picture for everybody listening, because this isn't something that we've necessarily dove into a whole bunch yet. But I earned my associate's degree in general studies completely online while I was active duty overseas, quote unquote,
Cuba.
in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And I took the time to do that because I had the time. And then also, I didn't pressure myself to try to figure out
You
what I
also
was.
like school.
I do. And that's a key point in all of this as well that you have to keep in mind because it comes back up later on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I went ahead and earned my associates in general studies because I didn't know what I wanted to major in for probably about 6 months, which isn't a long time, but when you're young, it feels like an eternity, especially when you're taking college classes and everybody's asking you like what you're majoring in. It feels very wishy-washy to have to say you don't know, and it's totally fine to not know, for the record. So I majored in general studies while I figured that
You
out.
get your core classes and stuff like that.
Exactly. It was useful, and I'm really glad
Yeah.
that I did it because it cut away a lot of the fat, so to speak. While I was in Gitmo, my primary activity when I wasn't working was outdoor based. So I was running, I was working out, I was free diving, I was hiking. I mean, those are the things to do. There isn't a whole lot else to do if you don't like being outside,
No,
or playing
you,
video games. You're going to have a tough
your
time.
main options are drinking, um, drinking, working out,
Yeah.
world class gym, and being outdoors. And clearly, Guantanamo Bay is full of water.
Yeah.
So
So I made myself very comfortable outside, and it was a huge source of comfort for me. A very healing space for me during a pretty tumultuous point in my life. And so being in the water, surrounded by beautiful coral reefs and fish and sea turtles, I fell in love with it. And at the same time, I could not escape what I was seeing, which was this incredible environment and man's impact on it, because Cuba is
there's a
placed.
lot of shipping. It's right below Cuba. There's a major shipping channel.
Yes.
And there's a giant, yeah, a giant shipping channel, tidal currents, everything pulls stuff in there.
Yes. If you're going to interrupt me, you better be able to say what I was going to say better than I could have said it myself.
I'm
just saying.
I'm giving you a look. Well, last time you said it was a fishing channel.
Did I say it was a fishing channel?
You said it was a fishing channel.
Nobody will ever know. That recording is gone forever. As I was saying,
it's not a fishing channel.
There are shipping channels. That portion of Cuba, Guantanamo Bay, is positioned pretty close to, like, if you're looking at a map, pretty close to some pretty poor countries. And so the shipping channels, those countries, there's a lot of garbage. And I was seeing a lot of that garbage in the water. And so that really resonated with me. And I wanted to learn more about that, understand it, and possibly become a part of the scientific community working towards preserving the natural environment, because I think it has real value. And so, long story short, I could wax eloquent for quite some time about it, but long story short, I chose to major in environmental science with a concentration in fish and wildlife management. And then, because I'm a wordy person and I love words, I decided to minor in English as well. And that was what I did at AMU. From the time that I left Guantanamo Bay up until my contract was about to end in Groton, Connecticut.
2020.
Yeah. And this is kind of where you come back into things as well.
Yeah. So I'll give you all the picture for me academically. I graduated high school in 2012, and I went to a year at a junior college near me, and I didn't know what I was doing. I knew what I thought I should be doing, but I didn't want to do that. And I was hating college. And, well, there's two, I found two options, two realistic options for something to do with my life. And I had help making the decision, because the options were the oil field or the military. And my parents' house was not going to be treated like a hotel. And looking back, I'm really thankful for that. And they were like, if you go to the oil field, we're not your hotel. And okay, never mind, I'll scratch that idea. And then I just got a wild hair in about a week. In about a week's time, it was like, I'm gonna join the military. Yep. And all the old dudes from church were all Navy vets. and I had talked to all the branches except for the Coast Guard, because they're non-existent in Central Texas, and the Air Force, because I think they are probably not working. Chair Force. They're yeah. It's a military talking crap thing. But I joined the military 2013. Fast forward all the way till 2017. Been in the military 4 years. And that was when you and I got together, and you really helped me. She didn't make me. She helped me and start school.
Mm-hmm.
So I started school after having done that year prior military, and I finally got my associate's degree in general studies as well. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I needed to do something. And so I got my associate's. I was up there in Connecticut with you, and I was taking classes because I'm from Texas. I'm not saying like everybody rides their horse to work or school in Texas, but a lot of people are outdoors people.
Yeah.
And I've always been a lover of the outdoors. And so, I mean, environmental science, fish and wildlife management, I've always loved fishing, hunting, dove hunting, especially, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, the management of all this stuff isn't just, it's not black and white, like numbers on a paper. It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the full scale of how the environment works together. And so with that, I started my major in environmental science with a concentration in fish and wildlife management. So that is 2020.
Mm-hmm.
We're both doing that, and then I'm out of active duty, and you're about to be out of active duty.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we decided to change up what we were doing from going online, and just we figured the natural progression would be to go to a brick and mortar school.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to elaborate on?
Yeah, because I think I was the quite a bit of a motivating factor for us making that decision. I think you would have been fine. You were fine with going to a brick and mortar school. You would have also been fine with continuing online.
Correct.
However, I felt at the time that I would have a better quality education if I was at a brick and mortar school. I thought at the time, big caveat there, that I would come out of that experience better equipped going into my chosen professional field. And so we looked at a whole bunch of different schools. I looked at a whole bunch of different programs from all across the country. We looked at Clemson and Florida State,
Marshall,
and
West Virginia,
and Texas A&M, of course, because we were planning most likely on coming back to Texas.
Somewhere warmer than Connecticut.
Yeah. And so I settled on Stephen F. Austin State University and the Arthur Temple College of Forestry, because out of every single school's environmental science / like wildlife program that I looked at, I liked SFA's the best.
The outdoorsy stuff that doesn't have an ungodly amount of chemistry.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
With it. Yeah.
And so we applied to transfer, got accepted, and then started attending. Last fall was our first semester. We each took on the books what looked like 12 credit hours each. Mm-hmm. We ended up doing 2 semesters there, and it was a mixed bag of experiences, and I think that you knew already what you were going to get. You had a much more realistic perspective than I did. I had kind of a rose-colored glasses perspective of it, and within the first 2 weeks of our first semester,
every rose has its thorn.
It does, and I realized very quickly that I had not really had an accurate perspective of what the experience was going to look like.
And so out of those 2 semesters, I think we can both agree that we really only got meaningful education out of one class with one professor out of that whole time. That doesn't mean that everything else was a waste, but it did not feel like it was a worthwhile investment of our time.
No, and I didn't leave the majority of those classes feeling like I had gained anything that I wouldn't have gotten staying at AMU going online.
From just art history, art music, you can click through that online or listen to somebody talk. You're going to get the same out of it.
Well, yeah, and And I think that the attitudes and perspectives of the faculty really opened my eyes as well. I mean, you're
Yeah.
talking about a generation of people, admittedly, who came up believing that the only way to succeed in life is to earn a 4 year degree and then go into a specialized field. And then also, they're in the business, the university itself is in the business of making money.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is their primary focus. And I think there were many times where we were left feeling like there was a general lack of care for the well being of students, and the quality of education that the students were receiving. Um, it felt a lot of the time like it was all just kind of a big marketing strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I had major issues with that.
I can't tell you how many times it felt like the only thing that the only way to succeed was with SFA, and
Yeah.
you're not going to get anywhere in your educational and then work journey in life without going to SFA. And they just really, I don't know.
Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what propelled us to leave SFA. So hang tight, go grab a drink, and we'll be right back.
Get the coffee. You took that far. You took that a little too far.
That is good hot coffee.
Excuse the hiatus. We
Right.
are back.
We are. We have coffee. We took a little break. Maybe you got a beverage too. Anyway, refocusing. Where we left off, I was about to start getting into why we left SFA. What precipitated us making that decision.
And what got us to where we are here.
Mm-hmm. So keeping in mind everything that I just said, a lot of the letdowns that we experienced, I do want to go on record and say that SFA as a whole and the Arthur Temple College of Forestry are really good. It's a really good university and a very good college.
They're excellent. It's an excellent program,
mm-hmm.
forestry. It's top notch. Them and Clemson. For all of the forestry of the United States. They have so many relationships with so many of the big names.
Yeah.
And they're really the tip of the spear with that stuff.
Yeah. And so I want to make sure that I say that because this is not me saying that like SFA is not worth the time or the money.
It just didn't feel like a fit for us.
No. And given everything that we went into and some things that we didn't go into, given the things that are important to us, our values and our perspective on life, knowing what we know, we got to the end of the spring semester and we're looking at registering for classes in the fall, this fall. And I kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And I was like, oh, I'll get to it tomorrow. And then I realized that
it was like a week later.
I was putting it off because I was dreading it. And like Stuart had said earlier, I'm somebody who loves school. I have since I was like 12 years old. I love challenging myself academically. I love learning new things. I love a lot of the stuff that comes with being in an academic environment. And the fact that after only 2 semesters at SFA, I was left feeling just like this drop in the pit of my stomach.
There were a lot of things we weren't looking forward to.
It spoke volumes. It really, really did. And I came to you and I was just like, I don't want to go back.
I kind of just shrugged and was like, okay.
Yeah. And it was
I did its due diligence, but it was a serious thing to say, but it was an easy decision.
It was, given everything. And the second that we made that decision and like verbalized that, it was like a weight was lifted from my shoulders and I felt so much better. Like I can't even begin to explain it to you.
Just with everything at SFA, if I was 18 years old and going there right after I got out of high school, I probably would have had a better experience. But you and I both have work experience. We have real world knowledge. And you know, that's not the only way. It's not sink or swim, go there or fail. Mm-hmm. We have a pretty good resume built on things that a typical college graduate won't have.
Mm-hmm. And given the life experience that we've had and the things that we did prior to returning to higher education, I don't want to say that our real world experience ruined college for us, but in a way, it just kind of opened our eyes.
Well, perfect example is, oh, you're not going to get to choose who you work with, so you're getting assigned to this person, and you get like the person that is so hard to work with. That's not true. If you're not happy, barring being in the military, still you can play favorites and make friends with some people and not be friends with others. But by and large, if you're not happy somewhere, you can always leave. I mean, you're never stuck. And it was just another them trying to get everybody to drink their punch thing.
Yeah, I think there were two experiences. I mean, I don't want to linger on this for too long, but at the same time, I think this is a really big deal, and I want people to understand this. And I want my words to be conveyed well. There were two experiences that we had at SFA that really opened my eyes. The first was that professor getting up in front of the whole class and basically throwing a tantrum because he put everybody into groups, and then everybody picked their own groups. Yeah, and then people were like, "Yeah, we're not doing this," and reorganized. The same amount of work got done. It didn't have any impact.
And you work better when you're with someone you want to.
Right, but he threw a fit about that because it ruined his
power,
his little god complex that he had going on. So that was a huge turnoff, and I recognize the fact that was only one professor, and I'm not basing my decision to leave SFA solely off of that, I assure you, but that has lingered with me. The second thing, and this really cemented in my mind the role that universities play in our society. We had gotten done with a field lab, and it was pretty late in the day. It was like 5:30. And so we decided to go eat at the cafeteria on campus.
Oh, that stuck with you?
It did, big time, because it really opened my eyes.
So we were starving. We'd been stomping around all day, measuring, 60 some odd pecan trees?
Yeah.
That had been measured by
a fool's errand.
by hundreds of students before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we get to the cafeteria, and normally if you live on campus, you sign up for their meal plan or whatever, and then if you live off campus, you pay a flat rate or whatever. And I didn't have my student ID with me for whatever reason.
And we actually, neither of us had them yet.
No. And so we asked the lady at the counter if she could just ring us up. And she did. It was no problem. But there were two people in front of us, and we saw how much she charged them.
And they were students.
They were students. And then we saw how much she charged us. And you want to explain that breakdown?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact numbers. I think it was...
It was a $2 or $3 difference.
Yeah, so we saw these two people, and they both... It's basically, I think, got the old barcode looking thing, or scanner looking screen.
Register.
At their register. And I think they got charged $7.49.
Yeah.
No. Sorry. They got charged $9.49. And it said student $9.49. Okay, they paid, good. And we told them we'd never been here before. We were students, that we didn't have an ID yet. And she's like, okay. She just rang us up, and she charged us $7.49 each. And I looked at the screen, and it was a faculty rate. So the wheels turning in my head, and how on earth is it that somebody's getting paid tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to work somewhere, and they get cheaper meals than the people who are spending, $12,000-$15,000 a year to go to school? Mm-hmm. Faculty get food for cheaper than students?
The faculty are paid to be there.
Yeah.
Students are paying to be there. Yeah. And the vast majority of the time, their parents are paying for them to be there.
It's just a money grab.
And they're being charged a full $2 to $3 more than someone who's on the payroll of the university.
And on another side note, cafeteria food is not worth $10.
No, it really wasn't. But that's really neither here nor there. It was just that huge price difference, and what that said to me about the university. And anyway, that's purely anecdotal. Like I said, neither of those two things were what cemented our decision to leave.
Good little examples of...
if you are looking for examples, or you're wondering kind of what influenced our opinion, those are two cases. And the long and short of it is we decided to leave, and we haven't looked back since. And we went back to American Military University. So we've come full circle.
Mm-hmm.
And we started taking our first 2 8-week courses now 3 weeks ago at the beginning of the month. And I feel it feels good. Like, it feels right. I'm so happy.
Yeah, I don't think it would. Yeah, I would say it feels right. It doesn't really feel normal. It feels like we're taking a backdoor approach to it. But at this point, I mean, I don't really care. I'm not here to say or to preach at you if it's, you know, going to school is like the only way that you're going to succeed, because it's not. But it's, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
I hear what you're saying. I would like to kind of expound on that
Sure.
a little bit.
Right.
There is more than one way to peel an orange and
skin a cat.
And skin a cat. There is more than one way to approach life. And knowing what we know now, given our life experience and given the field that we want to go into,
and where we want to go with it,
and where we want to go, if we were trying to go into practicing law or practicing medicine, I do believe that the school that you go to
mm-hmm.
carries some weight.
Yeah, and when you sit down at an interview table and you have your class ring on, and they see your class ring, or they know your last name because you're somebody's
son or daughter,
somebody's family or alumni, that's going to carry some weight. I have a good feeling.
Mm-hmm. So in that instance, I do believe that that is important. But there is no one-size-fits-all approach to anything. That is something that I have learned over and over and over again in my young adult life. There are millionaires
that don't go to school.
Exactly.
There are many, many business owners, blue collar, that just know how to manage.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got incredible companies.
Mm-hmm.
There's a dude, the guy that worked at that roofing company when I was at McCoy's, that he's just 70 years old, and he's just built a roofing company, and he's making millions of dollars in Nacogdoches, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
so that all
you
of
can
that,
succeed doing anything if you put your mind to it.
Yes, all of that is to say, if you are passionate about something and interested in something, then you should pursue that. And if that means that you take a quote-unquote traditional route and you go to a 4-year university, then so be it, and good for you. And if not, and you go a different route, you go into a trade or take an even less conventional route and you bootstrap something, then all the better. There is no one right way to do anything. I think there are multiple approaches.
There's not a black and white approach. And
exactly.
I think we're probably doing it in the gray way.
Yeah.
It's given us so many opportunities.
Yeah.
We were able to go travel, like I said. We were able to attend family stuff. I mean, and family's really important to us.
Yeah.
And it's just overall, say it again, added to the quality of life.
It's improved our overall quality of life. Yes. Yeah. So that is kind of the situation with our education.
Situation with education. Maybe that'll be the title.
It could be. That would be a good title. Anyway, I meant to mention that in a YouTube video. If you follow my YouTube channel, then I meant to mention it in a video at some point, and then there was just never a good natural place to fit it in. Stuart and I sat down and recorded a segment for it, and it really just wasn't good. And by the time I got to the cutting and chopping portion of the creative process, I just decided to get rid of it, and I figured I would just throw it in at some point. I mean, the people that needed to know knew. We told our family and that kind of thing, and that's the most important thing. And I think, we kind of got a mix of responses, because we have a mix of people in our family, people who have walked different paths and found different types of success.
Got some different responses too, because of kind of how I broke the ice.
Well, I wouldn't say you broke it, you shattered it.
Splintered.
Yeah.
Fractured. Everything.
And then I walked into it not knowing what I was getting into.
My way of doing things is ripping the Band-Aid off. And I was just like, we dropped out of school.
And didn't follow up with...
And I just waited for a response, and then I threw the Band-Aid on.
Yeah.
Threw a new one back on. But anyways.
But I think the biggest thing for our families is that they want to see us succeed in life. And
they just want to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons. And
And I think that regardless of how things have at times come across, that is a really important thing to keep in mind. And if you decide to take an unconventional approach to your life, be prepared to have conversations with people about why you're doing what you're doing, and be prepared for there to be opposition to that. But understand that, I mean, unless you have a crappy family, which I hope always that no one listening to this does, most of the time
everybody's got some kind of support group.
Most of the time, like, opposition is just coming from a place of concern.
Mhm.
Most of the time, not all of the time, but the majority of the time, it's because people love you and care about you and want to see you do well in life. And that's just a little thing to throw in there at the end. But yeah, so we're back at AMU and back in classes. I'm taking a English class. It's Wordsworth Through the Wasteland.
It's like British literature.
So it's basically taking you through all the different eras of British lit. And then I'm taking Environmental Policy, Regulation, and Law, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah, I've already taken that one.
It's all about like the EPA and the development of the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, and
the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, stuff like that.
The bread and butter of the framework that has created the environmental landscape as we know it today.
And I've taken wildlife management and statistics again. So that's keeping me busy.
But I think you'll have a lot of fun with wildlife management. I like it. It's just difficult.
Yeah, I already have. As long as I get your help with proofreading.
Always, of course. So anyway, do you want to take a break or do you want to push ahead into the next topic?
Let's keep going.
All right, so we're going to switch gears and kind of go in a very different direction. I want to give a quick couple of disclaimers before we get into it. The first is that we are going to do our best to approach this topic with sensitivity and care, because we are going to be talking about two individuals who are now deceased, and we understand that their families are dealing with the fallout of that.
And a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about is speculative, because there are a lot of people that are never going to get the answers that they want because of the results.
There's a lot of unknowns. In addition to that, we are going to be talking about suicide and mental illness. So if either of those topics are triggers for you, then I would recommend skipping ahead to the end of this episode. We would love for you to stick around, because like we said at the beginning,
check out like the last 5 to 8 minutes and you might get that.
We're going to have a little palate cleanser at the end. But I want to make sure I put that out there because I don't want to give anybody a shock. So anyway, we want to talk about the Gabby Petito incident. Do you want to give a little bit of background on that in case anyone listening maybe wasn't following that super closely?
Sure. So the Gabby Petito and Brian Laundry situation, that couple, they were pretty out there with their social media stuff, and
by out there you mean like active on it.
Active on there, and two very visible people that showed no outward signs of problems, but in the end both of them are dead. Gabby was murdered in the Tetons, and Brian, as speculation goes, died of self-inflicted wounds. And so it all happened where she died in the Tetons. She was murdered in the Tetons. He went back to Florida without her. She was missing then at that point. He didn't say anything. And then they eventually found her body. He left. He got away. And then he died of self-inflicted wounds.
And you're leaving out a really crucial part of this, which is the part of why it resonated with us.
I was just giving a background of it.
Very brief.
Yeah. So
I just mean the fact that the community that they were a part of.
Okay. Yeah. So they were in a van. They did all their stuff in, I think, a Ford Transit van, something like that.
That they had built out themselves.
If you look through Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff, that's a really popular thing today. With boondocking, with being out in the wilderness. I mean, that's what we did. I wouldn't say we ever were part of anybody's community, but we've definitely known other people that are full-time RVers We know people that have vans or buses.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess we can say that we're kind of in that same realm of things. And so being in that, that's one thing that resonates with us. And then secondly, here's the crazy part, is that they were in some of the exact same places, like less than 2 weeks before we were there.
Very eerie.
Yeah. So they went from, I think, New York, then westward.
All the way out to California, I think.
And they stopped in Monument Rocks. We'll put it in the show notes for where we were in Monument Rocks, Kansas. It's not a destination. It's just something if you're passing through. It's crazy looking. But they were there, and then we were there.
We have a picture of us in the exact same location that they had a picture of themselves. And it's just, Monument Rocks is not a place that we'd ever heard of prior to going on this trip this past summer. So the fact that we were there right after they were there, it felt like somebody ran cold fingers across the back of my neck.
Not at the time, but like looking back, you're like,
yeah,
that's not where she was murdered.
No.
But it's like we were following in some of their same steps. And this is like the stark contrast of how people's lives and relationships can be. I mean, they both ended up dead, and here we are still alive.
Well,
I'm saying that's a stark contrast.
Yeah.
And
then also the fact that, in a weird way, all the way up until we stopped in the Bighorns, we were kind of like mirroring their travel westward. We were going to go to the Tetons, and if we had made it there,
and we would have been in the Tetons while they were in the Tetons, and there's probably a 60-40 chance we would have been in that same wilderness area where she was murdered.
So
we were my transmission pan on my truck and waiting for parts, and stuck for a week away from being there at the same exact time. It's just creepy.
So the whole story broke. It captivated a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. I mean, you have this gorgeous girl who had her whole entire life ahead of her. She's doing this very trendy thing, but the entire premise behind it is that it gives you freedom and a greater degree of control over your life, and you're kind of like
a newfound way of happiness.
Yes, exactly. And this was what she was doing, and that really resonated with me. I kind of saw bits and pieces of myself in her, because she's a young woman who is super active on her social media. I watched like the one YouTube video that they had put out on their YouTube channel, and I could tell just from the way that it was organized and everything that she was probably the one that put it all together. And in our creative pursuits, I'm usually the energy behind it.
Yeah, I did one video and it never made it because it was bad.
Well, that's neither here nor there. It's just there were aspects of it that really resonated with me. It was just so incredibly tragic and sad, and I knew the second that it hit the airwaves that she was missing, you just get a bad feeling. And I just knew.
It's not if she's going to get found, it's when. And it's not in what shape, it's where is she in that shape.
Exactly. And we know so many people who are doing this kind of nomadic lifestyle, be it in an RV or a van or a bus or whatever, and the version of events that is portrayed on social media is usually very, very positive. Even if people acknowledge that they have bad days like we have, like by and large, this is a very positive lifestyle, and we're very thankful to be living it. But her death and all of the events surrounding that incident really highlighted a darker side of the hashtag van life, hashtag full-time RV living
Whenever
thing.
you're doing this stuff, that van life RV thing, you are going to spend so much time together, not apart. In my truck, in this RV, in this one little clearing in a forest. We didn't go more than maybe 100 yards away from each other for 3 months. And you are going to get to know these people. You're going to get to know who you're with really intimately.
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to have to know how to communicate to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had a fantastic time, but that didn't mean that we didn't have to work at our relationship.
No, of course not. The work never stops.
Correct.
And I've said it before, and I really believe that it's true, and I've heard lots of other people say it as well. It doesn't matter how good your relationship is, being in a tighter space, all of any issues that you have are
They're
exacerbated
going to be magnified.
because it's not like you can go to a different room or a different floor of your house and like get some space. There's nowhere to go. So communication and conflict resolution are two really crucial aspects if you're going to make a relationship in this environment work.
I agree.
In this particular case, I mean, we can speculate all day long about the nature of their relationship and what was really going on. The fact of the matter is, we'll probably never know. But I feel, based off of what I've seen and what people have said, that there was probably definitely some mental illness at play for both of them.
I would agree. I'll just say it because I think it's easier to pinpoint what exactly was him than her, because he ended his life and he ended it with suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that is an appropriate thing to do in any situation for anyone that is in a healthy mental state.
Right.
Guys, I think you can always work it out.
Mm-hmm.
There are bad days. Everybody has them. Bad weeks, bad years.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that your life isn't valuable.
Or that life in general isn't worth living.
And so I can speculate, but this is with quite a bit of certainty. I can say that he was not mentally healthy.
Mm-mm. And based off of, the things that we've seen, whether or not it was as a result of being in a toxic relationship or if she came into that relationship with some pre-existing issues, I don't think that Gabby was well either. And I can only imagine what her family is going through. I am sure they are replaying every single conversation that they've ever had with her. And him, every single interaction, trying to pinpoint and narrow down if there was like one instance where there was a red flag that they should have seen. But that's the thing. So many times you can have issues that are underlying and they don't come bubbling to the surface until you are in a situation that kind of nurtures that conflict. And I would say being in a tiny vehicle out in the middle of nowhere would definitely do it.
We were in 30 feet of an RV, and clearly you can go outside, but we were in 30 feet and they were in the back of a package van.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at like 8,
mm-hmm.
if that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, that, and also, and I mean, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a counselor, not a therapist. I just know from everything that I've read and heard, if you have, like underlying mental health issues, especially if they run in your family, they are likely to manifest when you are in your mid-20s or so. That is usually when like serious mental health issues become apparent. Which, on a related note, is why there's a generation of people right now that are dealing with so much. But that's an aside. So all of that is to say, it was a sad, tragic situation in which I think a lot of things went wrong at the right time. And I imagine it, I can only guess, but I would imagine it created this snowball effect in which a whole bunch of things happened and people reacted to them. And the tragic result of that is that someone lost their life. Well, 2 people lost their lives. And it didn't have to happen to either one of them. But following all of that, I think this was really the first time I've always been interested in true crime. It's kind of, I don't know, it's macabre, it's bizarre. I feel kind of drawn to it. I like knowing these stories because I figure if I know what happens to people, then I can better protect myself. But also, I just think it's fascinating. This was the first time I've ever seen you get really like interested in a true crime case.
Yeah, I can't really speak to as to why. It just was, it was captivating. I mean,
mm-hmm.
It was, this dude showed up, and this dude showed up in Florida without the person he'd been with. That'd be like us showing up back here without you,
I know.
or the
Or
RV
vice
showing up
versa.
without you. And I can't fathom what circumstances would lead to that.
I know.
And so I'm just like, like I know what I was pretty sure I knew what happened, but it's like, where did this go down, and how do you drive across the country and like act like it's normal? Don't say anything for 10 days. I mean,
I think that's why it
Christ.
really resonated with a lot of people. And so we had a lot of conversations about it following, especially once the news media really got this thing in their teeth and were like running it through their 24-hour news cycle.
And just like news channels do, they will pull everything they can, pull out all the stops to, put all the hyped words in their subject titles and just
rip it apart.
twist and rip everything apart.
And I think anytime something like this happens, and I've talked to you about this before, but this particular case reminded me of it. Anytime a woman is victimized by a man, there is immediately this rhetoric that is spun. And this is where I'm probably going to get a little bit controversial for some people, but I have my own opinion, and I'm speaking from my own platform, and you are entitled to yours. And I'm not saying that either one of us has everything 100% figured out, but I hope that you will hear me here. Anytime something like this happens, the rhetoric is always, quote, we need to teach our men not to rape, or quote, this wouldn't happen if men didn't rape, or something along those lines.
If they weren't controlling.
Yes, this is because hashtag patriarchy, or whatever. And I am obviously, I agree. Like, we need to be raising men, we need to be raising boys into men who know how to treat women. That is 100%, I'm 100% there, and I agree. But I don't think that you need to be like a social scientist to realize that people are going to act out, and you can do your absolute best to raise someone well, and they just might not take up with what you were trying to raise them in. And also, regardless of your intentions, not everybody is going to be blessed enough to come from a background where they were raised correctly. And so we live in a fallen, messed up world in a lot of ways. And so it frustrates me as a woman when I hear this rhetoric of we need to teach our men not to rape, because as a woman, I would really like to hear people say, and we need to teach our women how to defend themselves. Yes, we need to teach our men not to rape, obviously, but we need to teach our women to defend themselves, to stand up for themselves, to know how to protect themselves in violent situations.
Yeah,
it never happens.
That's not a popular opinion these days for some reason. The same opinion can be said for, we need to tell criminals not to shoot people. How about we take that the other way and teach people not to be victims, know how to defend yourself.
100%.
Carry a gun.
100%.
Something. I don't care. Something.
Know how to conduct yourself in a situation should it go south.
This is a fallen world, like she said. There's only been one perfect man that's ever walked on the face of this earth. And we are all going to be victims unless we're our own biggest advocates.
100%. And of course, in this particular situation, when you add in the elements of domestic abuse and mental illness, that really creates a problem area. Obviously, that's going to be even more difficult to address.
And if you're not carrying a gun per se, clearly I'm not carrying a gun trying to defend myself from you right now. Okay? There's one over there, but not right here. Okay. But know when to leave too. Like,
have a sense of self-worth. I feel, and I know so many people talk about this, like so many young girls don't have a sense of self-worth in themselves. Like, they don't know their own value.
They're tied up in their image of a relationship or...
Yeah, and that's been a factor for a really, really long time. I mean, that's been a conversation that people have been having since I was really, really young. And it's not getting any better. It's only getting worse. I mean, you have Instagram willfully acknowledging the fact that their platform induces like suicidal ideations in teenage girls. Like, that is a problem. There is a problem in the core of our society if we cannot have a conversation about equipping and strengthening women. I mean, hell, we're talking about the post-feminist wave. This should be a talking point for every single head on TV, and somehow it's not, and I don't understand. I mean, everybody wants to encourage women to exercise free choice over their bodies, but for whatever reason, that doesn't transfer into situations like this, where you're talking about a beautiful young woman who was taken out of this world and before even the prime of her life. And there are so many, likely, there were so many opportunities where this whole thing could have been averted. And I cannot help but wonder that if our society had a different view of the role that women play, if she might still be alive. And I know that that's controversial, and I know that I'm like poking a bear by saying that because it's not popular. But as a woman living in 21st century America who values my safety and well-being, as well as the health and well-being of my relationship, I have to say that. And that is something that, like, after it's all said and done, that really stuck with me with this whole Gabby Petito case. It really, really did. I mean, it
doesn't have to happen.
It doesn't. If we were teaching women how to first of all, to have a sense of self-worth and how to recognize red flags in a relationship. I mean, really recognize them. I'm not talking some Twitter thread that you read one time. I mean, actually recognize them, because they came from homes that were strong and taught them how to do this. If you raised up women who knew how to defend themselves and knew their self-worth, I'm repeating myself, I know, but just were better equipped. This kind of thing, I'm not saying it wouldn't still happen. It would probably still happen, but maybe it would happen a little bit less.
I think what you're getting at and what you're emphasizing is the other side of the
narrative.
The narrative and taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're not saying that don't worry about men.
No.
But that's like saying don't worry about the criminals with guns. Don't try and stop them from doing it, or don't tell them to do whatever they want. But both sides need to be seen evenly, where you need to teach men not to do these things and women what to do, because it's not always men on women. It's women on men. We've done law enforcement, like we said, and we've seen some men get the shit beat out of them by women.
Mm-hmm. It happens 100%. Way more often than people want to acknowledge too, which is a whole separate discussion in and of itself. I mean, we don't even need to get into that.
Both
today.
Sides of it need to be addressed. That's where one doesn't deserve more than the other.
100%.
But it needs to be equal and fair. And that's what I think civil rights are.
Yes.
Equal and fair. 100% equal. Nobody gets anything special. No reparations. That's another story too. But yeah.
100%.
Equal. We are equal.
100%. You don't want to raise up a generation of victims. You don't want to raise up a generation of aggressors.
Correct. And
I feel right now in our society that one is happening more so than the other.
It's very easy to be a victim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So anyway, I know that is really, really heavy. But that is something that has been on my mind a lot following this whole event. Again, I have nothing but sympathy and prayers for both the Petito and the Laundry family.
It's a very tragic thing. And I cannot imagine what circumstances led to somebody being murdered and somebody committing suicide. And that's tragic.
It is.
It is just altogether tragic. And yeah, we don't want to be Monday morning quarterbacks on it. But we just hope everybody can take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm. And use these situations, as tragic as they are, to kind of take a step back and take stock of your surroundings in your life, your mental health and well-being, the health of your relationships, everything. because if it can't be used for something good, then Gabby Petito and Brian Laundry died for nothing. And I think that at this point is as big a tragedy as anything else.
Yeah.
So
It's already captivated so many people, and if you get nothing out of this, that is more tragic, because there's so many more people that have been impacted than just those two.
So
we both take an exhale.
Yeah.
And let's go to our lighter note. But before I do, I just want to say that I think every podcast is eventually just going to be longer than 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean,
unless there's an exception. It's just, that's how it's probably going to be, and we're probably going to talk about trimming it every single time.
Yeah.
So I'm apologizing for the future apologies. And I want to end this with something that I found on Facebook. A friend of mine, I'll leave his name out, but he shared a post, and we want to leave every podcast with something positive, something good going on in the world. And I found a perfect example. I saw it, and then I thought of doing this for the podcast. It's not like I was looking for it. It came into my lap, and it's like I wanted to share it with you, and I wanted to share it with other people.
It made me feel really, really good to hear it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that whoever's listening to this now, especially after what we just got done talking about, it'll make you feel good too.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. It's a little bit wordy, but it's worth it. So the post reads, "I never do this, but it needs to be done because this person deserves a proper shout out. About 7 months ago, I purchased a used 2020 Ford Platinum from JCT Auto in Kilgore, Texas. Shortly after the purchase, we were experiencing difficulty getting the plates in and getting it registered. Colton Marr, the owner of JCT Auto, sent down a brand new King Ranch Edition, the same truck for me to drive as a loaner, and took mine back so he could try and get things figured out. In the process, a federal detective seized my truck and locked it up in a federal impound. So, come to find out, the previous owner of my truck had actually stolen it. These thieves went as far as changing VIN tags, rolling odometer readings back, changing tags on the engine, and fabricating Texas titles, something that myself and Colton had never experienced before. Obviously, as a customer who had paid cash for a really nice truck, I was concerned. Fast forward now to 5 months later. We learned that my pickup was one of 5 trucks stolen from that dealer on the same night and would be tied up in litigation for many months or even years to come. The owner, Colton, could have filed an insurance claim, given me a refund, or even given me another used truck. But he didn't. He did exactly what every business owner should do, and he took care of his customer. He got a brand new King Ranch Edition, same truck, same color as my Platinum. He had every single bell and whistle accessory that my pickup had installed on the new one, and delivered back to my home in San Antonio. At zero cost to me. None of it cost me a dime. $0. For that reason, he will have my business as long as he wants to have it. Colton, I know I came out on this deal much better than you did, and I appreciate it. My family and I will purchase our vehicles from you from this point forward. If you're in need of a high-end truck, car, or SUV, hit up Colton Marr and the guys at JCT Auto in Kilgore, Texas. You won't be disappointed."
Oh, that still gives me chills. I love that. It is so rare that you have an interaction that is that stellar with a business, particularly an auto business. I mean, I don't want to say that they're all scummy or anything like that, but
this Colton guy, he lost. It's a brand new truck basically, and with the rims, tires, bumpers, fancy lift, this, that, and the other. That's probably a $90,000 or $100,000 truck.
Yeah.
And that dude ate it. Because his reputation was more important.
Well, his reputation and the quality of business that he provided to his customer, which I just think speaks volumes. I mean, that is true integrity. And that's something that is really, really rare to find I feel nowadays. Like when you hear a story like that, it really sticks with you.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you guys see something like this, doesn't have to be clearly about the auto industry, but if you see something that you think we'd like, let us know, and it might get included in the end.
Well,
I want
really,
to start doing this because we can talk about some heavy things, and I think it's always good to look at the bright side too.
it is. And it doesn't have to be something that you think we would like. It can just be, it can
true.
be a story that you read online somewhere. It can be something that happened to you personally,
True.
something that happened to someone you know,
True.
an interaction or experience that left you feeling uplifted and positive about life.
Mm-hmm.
That is really the primary thing that we are hoping to include in this podcast, because as dark as life can get sometimes, there is really so much good. You have to look for it sometimes, but it's there, and when you find it, it deserves to be acknowledged and highlighted. So we hope that you guys enjoyed that story. We hope that you've enjoyed this entire podcast episode. I will include any pertinent links or anything like that in the show notes of this episode. And then behind the scenes photos, anything like that, you can go and see those over on our Instagram. I usually get those up within an hour or so of posting the episode. And
maybe at some point we'll give them our coffee recipe.
Maybe. But you can follow us at Maybe We're Just Rambling on Instagram. And if you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts, please rate and review. And of course, subscribe across whichever platform that you are listening on. We really appreciate everybody's feedback and support. It means more than you know.
Yep.
Just knowing that people are listening to us ramble feels really, really good.
Like I said, and I think the first one, it's like, you know what? I'm talking to you right now. Yeah, you with your headphone in, you're doing your thing, and you're listening to this. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.
So, I am Stuart.
And I'm Rebecca.
And this has been our ramble.